Labour are no longer the party for working class people. Keir Starmer and Labour are manipulating everybody in the UK. My account was going to get closed off and taken down. My Instagram was removed. I got some horrible articles written about me by the Daily Mail. The Conservatives and Labour are just two cheeks of the same arse. Everything just moved to the left. You're essentially saying to children, yes, you can be born in the wrong body. We're not meant to be doing that, you know. No child is born in the wrong body. We should be encouraging kids to accept who they are. I think it's deliberate. I think too much has gone on now for it to be incompetent.
Leilani, great to be here in Dubai with you. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. And there's sun, it's lovely, it's perfect.
How does it compare to UK right now?
Aside from the weather being absolutely perfect here, do you know what? I come here and I just love it. I feel safe. I think that's the biggest thing. I just love Dubai because I can just walk around. I don't have to look over my shoulder. I can have my phone in my hand if I want my phone in my hand. And it just feels really safe. And that's what I love about here.
It's crazy because maybe 10, 20 years ago, I don't think people would have, when you're in Britain, thought about safety because Britain was seen as such a safe country, and now it's just changed so much. Have you personally seen safety changes where you're more conscious about, for example, your phone or things like that?
Absolutely. So I live in the countryside, which is perfect because I'm behind gates and it's lovely and I'm away from everything. But obviously I have to go down to London from time to time, and it's like, right, take my ring off, take my watch off, dress down, don't bring a nice bag, you know, really play everything down. And it's, you know, it's sad that you have to live like that now in England. And then, you know, I'm from Bournemouth, which is down in the south, used to be the seaside resort, and everyone used to make a joke saying, oh God, isn't that where all the old people live? Because it was such this quiet, sleepy town. And I remember I was like 16 years old and I would go down the beach, I would walk through the Bournemouth gardens, as it got dark, call my parents from the town centre and say, you know, can you pick me up? This is when I was 14, 15, 16 years old. And I wouldn't walk down there now by myself. You know, in the evenings and when it gets dark, and that's, you know, in the winter, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, it's dark, isn't it? And it's like, you couldn't walk down the beach now on a weekend and then walk through the gardens because it's just not safe. And, you know, it's really sad that we have to live like this.
Well, what's some of the reasons you think safety's changed so much in the UK? Because, like you say, your story is like, so many people I know will say the exact same thing as you. I don't think you're isolated in what you're saying. What do you think has been one of the main reasons now safety in the UK is at such a low?
I think there's a couple of things going on. Somewhere like Bournemouth, there are a lot of illegal immigrant hotels. Right. But in London, it's not just the illegals. It's the fact that Britain is now just completely and utterly soft on crime. Yeah. Like, you know, and they can be British-born criminals, they can be foreign criminals, but it's just a fact that it's really soft on crime. And you see it with the shoplifting, muggings, all sorts of things like that. So there's just no punishment. And in fact, you know, and there's such a two-tier system as well. It's like, you know, they'll knock on your doors for social media posts, but you actually commit a crime, or, you know, you see drug dealers coming in, bringing drugs in from somewhere else, they get suspended sentences. You see people with like horrific child abuse material on their phone, suspended sentences. Hugh Edwards is an example, suspended sentence. And you see the shoplifters and everything, and no one's even catching them. So, again, social media posts, they're like straight on it. So I think that's it. And when you look at Dubai, it's like you step a foot wrong and you steal, you shoplift, they'll be straight on you. It just wouldn't happen. Yeah. And people are so worried about that happening that they wouldn't even think about mugging you or stealing, because there are punishments for the crimes that we don't see happening in the UK.
No, definitely. I was back in London during the summer, and I remember I went to a pub, and this was like really early during the day, and I had my bag just on the side of the chair, and the waitress came over, picked it up, and she said to me, "Do you mind just putting it in between your legs?" because we've had bags being stolen the last week. And then I just inquired, I said, oh, like, really, when was the last one? And she said 2 days ago, somebody had just walked past. You know, he had waited for the person to go to the toilet. Then he had taken her handbag, walked out, didn't run. She chased after him and said, you know, you're stealing somebody's bag, turn around, stop. He looked at her, turned around, spat in her face, and just walked off. Yeah. Not running away, not like no fear of, I'm actually stealing a bag and I'm going to get in trouble, just casually strolled out.
And no one else is going to try and stop it either, because who knows if they're going to pull a knife out? Do you know what I mean? Point. Because even that isn't going to get you really much of a sentence. They still have to get caught. There's people getting stabbed, robbed, everything. No one wants to jump in because of the fear of what's going to happen to them. And then, you know, can you even get the police to come? It's going to take 10 minutes, and by then, you know, they're just off.
You mentioned earlier about social media. Do you worry about your social media posts? With what's going on now? No, I have done, and I've made a few jokes about it in the past, but, you know, I'm very careful, and I have to really think about what I'm saying. Because, like, you know, Lucy Connolly, what she said wasn't really that bad in the scheme of things, but it was a post just, you know, saying, I couldn't care less if X, Y, and Z happens, not go do it. It was said in, you know, real anger about after the murder and massacre of these 3 little girls. So she said it in such an angry state. So I just try and take a minute to think, like, what am I saying? And otherwise, you know, it is, you have to be worried. Look at, you know, there was, Peter Lynch wasn't social media post, it was like a placard, but you had Wayne O'Rourke, Julia Sweeney, Lucy Connolly, all got sent to jail. And so I think it is worrying, but at the same time, I feel like if I don't say something about the state of the country, like who will? Yeah, I mean, like, it's so bad with what happened with Lucy Connolly, and like I don't think any of your posts are remotely offensive, but it's just when you see what some people have been imprisoned for, it's crazy. Like it's really, really disturbing in terms of, I think the UK now is the number 1 country, the most arrests, more than Russia, more than China, which is so scary.
And then, you know, and you see the 2-tier side of it as well. But also, like, if you look at Starmer's celebration of when that the dual citizen, I think he's an Egyptian British guy, got released, and he'd really campaigned for that, and then you see what he'd actually written. It's like, wait a minute, you've campaigned for this guy, and what he said is like it's so blatant. I don't even want to repeat it, you know. It's like it's just so blatant. And this is the thing. And then of course Starmer says, like, oh, I didn't know about the social media post. But it's like, well, you didn't know about the side of those. Then you say you didn't know about Peter Mandelson's emails to Epstein when you made him the ambassador to America. So it's like, what do you actually know? And so I think that whole I don't know thing, or the incompetence angle, is such a cop-out with our politicians. And I think that's the route they get, oh, I didn't know, you know, and people look at it as incompetence, but really I think a lot of what's going on that we see as incompetence is actually like very orchestrated, facilitated, all sorts.
I was just going to ask you, how much of it do you think Keir Starmer is just grossly incompetent, or have you started to think that it's almost deliberate, like it's malicious?
I think it's deliberate. I think too much has gone on now for it to be incompetence. I really do. And there's still a lot of people that just say, oh, they're all stupid and they're all dumb and they're just incompetence. But I don't know whether it's because I lived in Los Angeles for a long time and I see so many people playing dumb who are very, very switched on, and they play dumb to manipulate. But I've seen a lot of that, and I think it's like playing dumb's probably one of the easiest things to do to be able to manipulate somebody. And I think that Keir Starmer and Labour are manipulating everybody in the UK, or have done, but I don't know that it's working so much anymore.
I mean, I think it's, do you know, I was going to say, I don't think he's so unpopular, but I was going to ask, do you know anyone that is remotely supportive of him or his party? I know some people have made, like, I get people who have made excuses for him or saying it was such a bad state, blah, blah, but I to this day, I don't know anyone that's remotely supportive of him right now.
Right now, I don't know. They've gone very quiet. I do know a lot of people when I was like quite vocal on social media, talk about him in a negative way, would come on and try and like argue with me about it. But yeah, I think there was a lot of people that were obviously upset about the Conservatives, who weren't really conservative and who were also schemers and liars, and fraudsters and corrupt. But I don't know that, and then so people are like, right, let's vote for Labour because of them, which I would never do. But I still don't understand how they haven't looked kind of back and seen Labour's record and thought, it would be a really good idea to vote for these like socialists.
Well, yeah, it's so
like,
true.
Hold on a minute, so I don't know. And there's a few people that I do know that have said, oh my gosh, I didn't expect this, and I really regret it. But it's like, what possessed you? And they don't really go into it. Like, what actually possessed you to vote for him?
Yeah, aside from we hate the Tories like that's I mean, like I was looking at his popularity, and like I think it's gone to like 12-13%, so on the lowest ever for a prime minister. And I just think maybe his most successful thing was the way he somehow last election shaped himself as this like centrist, moderate guy, which is crazy. Like when you think how extreme he really is, I think that I still find it crazy that like the BBC and all these news outlets see him as like this moderate guy when he is such an extreme politician.
And the lies as well. And I think he sold these people with his manifesto about taxes. And, he was always about the working person. And the amount of times he said that. And it's really funny because he's got all these slogans that he came out with, and in my mind's eye, and I will always fight for the working person. And then when you actually try to say, what is the working person, he cannot give you the definition. And then, and then I think, a few days ago he came out with, we shouldn't try and run this country on slogans. And I'm like, you're the person that comes out with the most slogans and buzzwords and kind of repeats them as if, like, if you repeat these slogans and buzzwords enough, people will actually believe it. So, it's quite a weird one, but he's totally lied. And I do think that politicians need to be held to their manifesto. And if you backtrack from it, you need to be held accountable, because you can't just say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to raise taxes. I'm going to make sure the elderly looked after and our most vulnerable people, and then completely flip it and, take away their heating allowances and raise taxes and do actually the opposite.
Do you see any positives in general in the UK for 2026? And do you see anything remotely positive in 2026 with Labour and Sir Keir Starmer?
I don't think that there's much that he can do that's positive, but what I do see that's positive are people are really waking up, and I think that they will vote for reform because they see that, the Conservatives and Labour are just two cheeks of the same arse. Now, I don't know if this is a naive thing, putting my trust into reform. I'm really sad about the fallout really between Rupert Lowe and agreed. Farage and Zia Youssef. That's a big shame. That's a really big shame. But I do suppose the only thing is that people see that they're useless, that Labour are useless as well. And I always try and be positive, and it's like, can anything good really happen? Or am I just going to go home and things are just going to be worse and everything just gets worse again? It's like, I'm trying. It's like, and then I find myself like closing off from everything and just, I find myself being like a prepper almost, like preparing for the worst and trying to make a positive out of that. So I don't know.
I mean, I started following you, I think maybe a year or two ago. No, it would have been during COVID or after a few months of COVID really got going. And just following you since then and hearing you speak now in our previous podcast, I find it crazy that you were in modelling, in show business and all this sort of stuff, because, I mean, it'd be good to get your take on this. With the sort of views you have and the way you speak, it's very rare you'll see somebody in your industry speak like this. Why do you think that is? And are there lots more people like yourself who just maybe don't speak?
I think there are definitely a lot of people like me that think the same way as I do that don't speak up. I think there's probably a lot of people in the music industry that don't because they want to bring people together. Maybe that's why they're in music, to influence through that way. I think there's a lot of people in that industry. I think there's a lot of people in the TV industry as well that, you get cancelled, don't you? It's like, I remember when I first spoke out during COVID, I've got an amazing agent and I love her to bits, and she's also a friend of mine, and she's like, Leilani, as a friend, I love what you're doing. I love what you're saying. I fully support you. As your agent, I just want you to know you'll probably never ever do anything on the mainstream again.
Wow.
I was like, well, you know what? I guess I'm lucky I'm in this position where I don't really have to, and I just finished a reality show that came out during COVID or just before COVID, and it wasn't something I wanted to go back to or continue, and I'd actually said I'm not coming back for another season. So I just thought, you know what, it doesn't really matter. I don't have to do this, but what's more important is trying to get people that think the same way together so they don't feel so alone.
Yeah.
And I think I've kind of achieved that in my little circles, or the small amount of people that do follow me have reached out and said, God, I thought I was the only one that thought this way. I thought I was going crazy. And I'm so glad, that you kind of spoke out and said something, because they all felt very isolated during COVID and stuff.
You're definitely one of a handful of people I knew, I followed or whatever, that spoke out during COVID, for sure. There was not many that did. When you decided to speak out like that, were you said your agent, your friend kind of warned you, were you fully aware of the repercussions? Like, did it really hit, or did that come a bit later?
I think it came a little later. I remember the first time I spoke out, there was a girl called Leanne Brown, and she had done the show for a few seasons that I had done, The Housewives of Cheshire, and I saw her and she was speaking out quite a lot, and I would see myself supporting her in the comments and kind of arguing with people. I'm like, this is really weak. I'm speaking in her comments, but I'm not putting any of my own content out because I'm a little fearful still. So I decided to say something. I didn't realize my account was going to get closed off and taken down. My Instagram was removed. I got some horrible articles written about me by the Daily Mail and other newspapers. So,
Wow. That's crazy. And after, when your Instagram account did get closed, did you ever not have regrets, but during that period, was there any points where you thought, should I cower down? Should I apologize? Like you see some other people do, and it'd be human to think that. But with yourself, did you ever think of doing that? Or
no, I think, I was really upset because there was a lot of things on my Instagram that were very personal to me.
Okay.
My, like my animals, my friends, family. There were people on there that had died that I had pictures with that I hadn't stored, because Instagram was almost like my little photo storage thing. So maybe it wasn't the best platform to use, but what I decided to do is I'm going to go full on now, and I'm going to go onto Twitter, and I'm going to just speak even louder. And you know what? Actually, the fact that the Daily Mail has written such disparaging things about me only got more people to kind of look me up.
Yeah.
So, and that's what happened for me when I saw certain people like. There's an actor called Matthew Marsden. I was like, he got completely battered. And I'm like, right, let me look him up. We're on the same page. I'm going to follow him. There was a chef in Australia, and they absolutely destroyed his career. I can't remember his name now, but because he got wiped off from everything. But I remember going and finding him and following him. And I think he's living a happy, quiet life on a farm somewhere in Australia now. So I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to speak up and be louder about it, because if you're trying to say it's misinformation when it's not, and it's my opinion, there's obviously something behind it, and I don't like to be told what to do. So, by the mainstream kind of saying, telling me what I had to do and putting me in this little box. I was like, no, I'm going to like be a little bit louder.
Right. And like when you Daily Mail did all this sort of stuff, what was the response like from people? So like from ordinary people, maybe friends and family first we can ask. So what was their reaction like? Because I've got this, and I think you're definitely one of the examples. I think there's Graham Linehan. There's a few examples of people who spoke on certain issues very, very early. I feel like if you spoke about what you spoke about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, now, I'm not sure if the repercussions would be as strong. Whereas I think because you're one of the first people doing it, they just seem to really pile in on you and almost try and take you out. Is that fair, do you think?
Oh, that's definitely fair. I think that's the thing. I think when you're the first person to start talking about something, they really go for you. And obviously, I had loads of friends that thought I was nuts, completely nuts. And, you know, I've actually have forgiven a lot of people for the terrible things they do. I think I hold a little bit of a resentment and bitterness towards the journalists in the Daily Mail. But, you know, friends and family, I've somewhat forgiven. But I think that's like with any topic or subject that comes out when it's new. And if you don't there's always a rush to follow what the mainstream's saying, I think. And then sometimes it might take people a week. Sometimes it takes them a couple of months. Sometimes it might take them years to actually see what's behind it, what we're being fed, all this like slop, I call it, by the mainstream. Or, you know, sometimes even now online you have, I think, so many paid influencers and people kind of being sponsored or having backers that there's, it's really hard now even on, you know, on social media to know what's kind of organic and what's being paid for. So I think sometimes even now I see myself, I have an instinct, but I kind of sit back and wait maybe a week or so before I really say anything. And I want to get a big kind of overview. I think that's kind of where I am more now. But I do think that when you're the very first person to say something, there's going to be like a big pylon.
Yeah,
really big pylon.
I think like you're a good example of it in the COVID stuff, and there's so many people on COVID specifically. We had Graham Linehan recently on the podcast with the trans stuff. I think he was so early, and it's like destroyed parts of his life, his career.
I mean, that's insane because he's totally right. Same with J.K. Rowling. You know, they really went after Sharon Davies as well. But she just got an award, didn't she? I can't remember. I don't remember all these like Queen's awards and the 3 little titles that came up. King's awards, but what is it that she? MBE? Is it MBE?
I think it's MBE or OBE. I should know this because we're gonna have her on the podcast soon. But I think it's OBE or MBE.
Yeah,
or the two.
And she absolutely deserves it because she was one of the very first people as well that spoke out about it, but relating to women's sports, because obviously being the incredible Olympian she is, you know, she has insight into, you know, when Leah Thomas won and beat Riley Gaines or came equal to Riley Gaines, and she, like, you know, she spoke out about it, and I think it's really, really important. So being the first person on a certain subject, you're really going to get a pile on. And that's the thing as well, like, you know, going back to people in my industry or my former industry speaking out, I think, you know, sometimes they see what's happened and how people's careers and even, you know, his life really got destroyed because it led to the breakdown of his marriage and everything else. And, you know, his income and that. So I think that kind of sends a warning to people, like, be careful about, you know, what you say. So I think it takes a lot of bravery and courage to be able to be first on a subject that's very, you know, being pushed a certain way.
How do you feel about the gender ideology movement? The reason I thought about asking this morning, in that you obviously were in a career of modelling and won prestigious awards for female category. How do you feel now with the gender ideology? Do you like? What's your opinion on it now, and have you seen it creep up into modelling and show business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was I 18 or 19? I can't remember. It was 98. I won Miss Great Britain. I went to Miss Universe, and it changed my life. It meant I could go to America. I got TV opportunities, sponsorship opportunities. I made money from it. You know, in America, girls get scholarships from it. So it was massive in opening up my career. Now you see that men can do it. I mean, men can do their own things, but like, you're taking that opportunity away from a female. And so I have seen it in modeling, but I see it but in sports as well. I mean, you know, a mediocre male then beats like a top world-class female. It's so wrong. And, you know, I don't mind what a man wants or a woman wants to do in their private life if they want to switch and change, but it's when they bring children into it, or when they force me to have to believe that, you know, they deserve to be in a women's competition if they're born a man, or they deserve, you know, whether it's sports, whether it's a work competition, whether it's a modeling competition, and the other way around. Well, you never really see females that were born female transition to men and then go and take part in men's sports. Do you never really see it that way around? So, and then, you know, when they do this, or they go on the hormones, and then the natural, it's really hard. It's so confusing. When the people born as women then, you know, cut off their breasts, go on these hormones, say they're men, grow a beard, and then have a baby, I think, my God, you know, what's going to happen to that poor child? You know, how are those, you're experimenting, how you've got all these cross-sex hormones in your body, and you're producing a child. What's going to happen to that child? So when you bring children into it, whether it's as a parent, or puberty blockers, or the surgery, when you do anything to a minor, that's when I have a big problem with it as well. So, you know, it's the sports, it's the work, it's the awards, it's children, having children, but you know, if you're what you do in your own private space is totally fine, like, I don't care, but it's when you start encroaching and forcing others to try and believe it, or messing around with children, I have such a problem with it. Huge problem.
I think it's like destroying women's rights, and I think it's like you said, the other way around is obviously still an issue, but it is largely the men pretending to be women that is causing so much pain. And your example of the sport one, I think Leah Thomas is a great example. As Elliot Thomas, he was ranked 400, 500, 600 in men's, becomes a woman and he's the number one. It's crazy. Like, and how demoralizing for those female swimmers who've tried to swim their whole life, and now you've got this 6'5" man with a wingspan, which is crazy, and he's just switched overnight, and he's there, and no one can say anything. And it shows
actually what a loser he is, because
100%.
Because he didn't beat them by like massive amounts. He beat them like just like by little bits, and it's like, Leah Thomas, it's madness, and the problem is it's still happening. There's a lot of sports that are stopping men. That have transitioned being in female sports, but you still see it. But it should have a complete and utter ban around it. But to see, you know, Graham Lynham and all the rest of these people have their lives destroyed for talking about it, or, you know, or get fired because they refuse to call someone else by different pronouns. See this, and that's another thing that, you know, that's it's so wrong that people are being sued, jailed, like, what's his name? Enoch Burke. Is it Enoch Burke in Ireland? He got jailed because he refused to call someone in school by the pronouns that they wanted to be called by. So when you see that happening, you're just like, this is crazy, and I just don't know how anyone defends it, or how Wes Streeting says, we're going to do some studies into puberty blockers in children. Like, that's some, you know, I can't remember his name, the Nazi scientist that would like experiment on people. that
is crazy.
That's what it is. It's like some disgusting experiment on children. It's like, it's wrong.
Do you, because you've kind of answered my question I was going to ask you. I was going to say, do you see the tide changing where there's more people with our views on this? But then sometimes I think, yes, that there is a tide change. But then I hear when Wes Streeting's going to do something like that, and then I think, is it changing? What do you think? Do you think it's now more easy to talk about the fact that saying what we've just said, do you think it's easier to say that now?
I think it is easier. I definitely think it's easier to say it, but you still see, like I said, I mean, after I can't remember the name of the reports that came out saying how awful it was, what they were doing. After those reports came out last year, I'm just so shocked at the fact that Wes Streeting says, let's experiment and do some studies and see the effect of them on children. And start saying because you're essentially saying to children, yes, you can be born in the wrong body. We're not meant to be doing that, No child is born in the wrong body. We should be encouraging kids to accept who they are and how they were born, not saying, like, we're going to give you these chemicals that are basically going to sterilize you and chemically castrate you. That's not what we should be doing to kids.
I think people will definitely look back in maybe 20, 30, 40 years and just be like, this is crazy. Yeah. What we have just gone through the last 10, 15 years, it's just, there's nothing about this is surely sane. Like, we're confused just talking about it. I don't know how they feel, the people doing it to themselves. It's just horrible and, it's deeply, deeply worried. Did you lived in LA for long periods of your life. Did you see any of this happening when you were there?
I think I do remember coming back to England. So I'm talking like 8-9 years ago, I came back to England. And I was talking about the transgender issues then, just on social media.
Right.
And I think people thought I was a little nuts.
Right.
Or I remember, remember someone saying, you're being really hysterical about this. This is like so small, never going to happen.
Okay.
But I'd seen some of the transgenderism in America and California, and I'd seen the way it was kind of being embraced, rather than people saying, hold on a minute, what are we doing here? And just putting, and so I don't think it had been popularized, because I think what happened is during COVID, when there were a lot of children on their mobile phones, kind of stuck in their own little worlds, they were scrolling through and they were seeing people like, I'm not even going to remember their names because I've tried to get it out the head, but there's that Dylan Mulvaney and everything, prancing around, getting popular. And it was almost like, I think it was like a social contagion. Yeah. And I think it comes along with, it's in a similar vein, I feel, as something like anorexia, where a young girl will think,
agreed,
she's got body dysmorphia, she thinks she's fat when she's skinny.
Yeah.
And you'd never kind of say to a young, I'll help you diet and I'll help you lose more weight. And, you don't kind of affirm that stuff. You give them help. And I think that's what happened. I think a lot of it was during COVID, where kids were just like isolated in these, online worlds. And it really, really, I think then it really, really took off as something, because, that's what children were being kind of influenced by really quite strongly. And also, because they were so isolated, I think there were a whole lot of issues that come with that. And, I do think gender dysphoria is, just like body dysmorphia it is a dysmorphia, and it is it is a mental issue, whether that you're allowed to say that or not. And it's probably something most kids would grow out of if they're not like encouraged, and kind of, because you see that as well, that these people embrace it like it's something special, and especially the virtue signaling mums, like, oh, it's special, oh, my kid's like trans and and so I think kids didn't get the help that they needed. They were under a lot of pressure, and they were seeing this like filth just coming up on their phones all the time. And so anyway, that's why I think it took off. And then I just remember that person saying, God, you're being really hysterical about it. And I'm like, God, it's really happened. It's really happened. And then we're, giving them all these drugs to help them transition, which they never really can. And sterilizing them then happened. And it's like, well, it wasn't that hysterical after all this. I could just kind of see it coming.
Well, had people been more hysterical at that time, then this may have never happened. And it's scary. Do you see a tide changing at all? Do you feel it at all? Or?
I think there's still a little way to go. I see it in America because you see the people, the detransitioners, come out and speak, but then you see the detransitioners also getting a lot of stick from people that want to transition.
Right.
But we haven't really seen that with the detransitioners in the UK yet. So until it gets to that point, I think, you know, when the kids start suing the NHS saying, you put me on puberty blockers too young, you know, I had a mastectomy too. Until you see that, I don't think anything's going to change in the UK.
It's so scary. And the West Street thing on the puberty blockers on those kids, you know, I'd love people to revisit that in 20, 30 years' time on those kids, because you're just going to, you can almost guarantee at least 50%, if not more of them, are just going to have had horrific experiences. And we're not going to know, and that's the other thing about a lot of this, we don't actually know the long-term consequences. The data is so small, but I've just seen, like you said, about the detransitioners, and some of the stories are just horrifying. They're going to die so much younger than they would have just because of the amount of surgery that's gone on their body. So it's so scary.
Yeah.
When going back to LA, what, you know, we've talked a bit about the trans stuff. Was that one of the scariest, horrific things you're seeing in LA? Because at the moment, I ask this because there's so much that's gone on in 2025, talking about Jeffrey Epstein, P. Diddy, and all this sort of stuff. I think more and more spotlight again on Hollywood and show business. Did you see much of this when you were there?
To be fair, I don't think I didn't see that. I didn't see the trafficking side. But there was definitely a casting couch. I didn't do well in LA at all. Right. You know, I didn't get into any movie. I didn't try. There was definitely, I saw a casting couch scene. There were, you know, you go to any restaurant and there's always like some young hot girl with some old guy that's either got money or influence or in the music industry or the TV industry. So you'd see that. When I went to Los Angeles, I think I was like 23, and I remember getting there and I was like, oh my God, I want to live in this place forever. Like I just loved it. I absolutely loved the palm trees, the weather. And I suppose it's a bit like Dubai. You come here and it's just like, oh, the weather and the palm trees, and it's just like hot and beautiful. And yeah, I got there and I was just given this amazing opportunity, modeling and doing this model. I was doing a model boxing competition, so I was being paid to train in boxing, and then
amazing. Okay, wow,
yeah.
Okay.
I think that's where I get my feistiness, and like I think I am naturally like such a fighter or a scrappy.
You've got nothing to worry about in London. You can have your phone out, bag it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm such a scrappy person. So I think so I absolutely loved it, and then I realised I'm like, God, every bloke here is like Peter Pan. No one like settles down. Right. And it probably took me 16 or 17 years to think, actually, I want to be back in England. I miss a lot of the normalcy. I miss the hills and the countryside. And I had a horse in LA, and I wanted to do more with my horses in England, so I moved back to England. But yeah, I saw a side of LA that was like a little seedy, just in the, like I said about, but I never saw that kind of like Epstein. I mean, I would have been too old, wouldn't I? I'd have been way too old in my mid-20s. I never saw like, you know, that kind of side to it. I never got invited to the parties, but I think as well, I remember saying, when I got off the boat, I could say get off the boat. People saw me as somebody that just got off the boat. You know, I was there. I was a young model, youngish. And I could see people testing me. And I used to laugh when going back to playing like the naive card or the Dom card. I remember people seeing me and just assuming that I'd be really stupid and really naive. And I was this like wannabe model that had come to America. And, you know, how far would I go kind of thing. And I think when people met me, they were already like, oh, speak to me for 5 minutes, and they're like, oh, she's got her, she knows what she's doing. She's a bit smarter than she might look. Right. I don't think she's going to be that easily manipulated. She seems to have her own mind. I think that's what came across when people, you know, within the first like 20 minutes of meeting me said that would prevent me from ever being probably invited to those kinds of things. You know, they'll be like, oh, yeah.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Were you, so you would have seen Me Too? You would have been there for that era, or?
Yeah, no, I think I'd left during Me Too.
Okay.
But I've got quite a controversial opinion on Me Too. Because, like I said, I saw the casting couch and I saw women willingly doing things to further their careers. I mean, I saw that, but it wasn't, but to me, I don't look at it as the Me Too, I've been completely and utterly used. I saw it as the other way around. I saw these girls willingly going out of their way to find the directors, the music people.
Wow, okay.
Going back to parties, going to, the after parties, going back to people's houses or hotels. So I suppose I saw it in the other way around, because I saw it as those girls putting themselves out there in order to get the jobs.
Right.
So, and then, I kind of looked at a lot of the girls that were saying Me Too, like the Me Too, thinking, I don't know, the girls that I met that were kind of doing that, they were it was like willing.
Right.
They were doing it kind of willingly and then going, oh, like I'm a victim after, when their careers didn't kind of work out for them.
Interesting.
So I wasn't really on with the Me Too, because I'd always kind of think, but hold on a minute, why would you go back? Why would you go to somebody's hotel late at night? That's just not something I would do. But you wouldn't do them if they were like some poor, uninfluential person.
Yeah.
You're doing this. And then I compare it to, Bournemouth, where people are dragged into toilets and dragged into bushes and dragged into alleyways. And I'm thinking there's a real discrepancy here.
Yeah.
You've got these girls going to hotel rooms or people's houses and after parties, but they're getting this Me Too attention and Me Too. But what about these girls getting pulled down alleyways? Everyone seems to forget about them because it's not glamorous and there's not a big name man involved. It's some disgusting person that's, being put up in some hotel doing it. I guess I have a bit of a controversial view on Me Too.
It's funny, well, not funny, the sick irony with what you said about what's going on in parts of England and Me Too. It's like the same actors, actresses, mainstream media, whatever, they'll talk so much about the Me Too one, but never anything about the more, I would argue, the much bigger issue that's going on right now in the West.
That's it. Well, exactly this, and I think that's like you said, the irony of it all, and almost the virtue signal of it all. It's like, but you were all really quick to write #MeToo, because someone's hit on you or tried it on, but you've never spoken about these the grooming gangs or the girls getting dragged into bushes. We're seeing rapes daily now, but gang rape, things that I don't ever remember happening, gang rapes being really common. That woman being sexually abused on a bench and she had a stroke and died. And you see all of these things, and it's where are the women that were so vocal during Me Too? And also another thing with the Me Too thing is you never hear about the women who actually said no. They were like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to the hotel. I'm not going to the after parties. I'm not doing all of that. And then their careers just went because they didn't participate in it. So to me, the women that said no and lost their careers are more of a victim than the women that were like, yeah, I'll go along with that. I'll play my part on the casting couch, get my big jobs.
Yeah.
And then later when things don't quite work out because maybe they hadn't been a very good person, then they scream Me Too.
I think that I'll be interested. I don't think your opinion's as unpopular as maybe you think. I think maybe it would have been 10 years ago, whatever. But where I started to change on Me Too, initially I thought, great movement, evil men manipulating these big, powerful people, your Harvey Weinsteins, whatever. But where I started to really start thinking, this is getting a bit crazy, I remember, I think it was Matt Damon on a TV show. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he said something along the lines of, he said, the problem with the Me Too at the moment is there's a difference between slapping a girl's bum and rape.
Yeah.
And he's like, both are wrong, but you can't compare the same thing. And he got ambushed, absolutely ambushed, to the point where he had to apologize. They took him off the press tour of the film he was promoting because they were just like, this is so wrong. And I remember thinking, he's not said anything wrong. There is a difference.
There is a difference.
There is quite a stark... They're both wrong, but one is really, really bad. One is bad. One is really... And you can't... And I remember thinking, that's not... I kind of see what he's saying, but the way they ambushed that, I was like, wow, like that's not healthy or right. As in, there is something not quite right there. You can't put the two in the same sentence.
No, because I can't even imagine being a woman that was raped and then somebody who got a little slap on the arse saying, oh yeah, I've been through the same thing as you. It's like, hold on a minute. Yeah. It's not the same. And like you said, it's not that it's not that it's okay to do that, but it's just, you can't put it in the same category. It's not in the same category. And I think that's the problem. And I know men in Los Angeles that I was talking about this with a friend actually, that have kept their letters and emails and Christmas cards from women because just in case these women turn around and, ever say something about them. And, apparently that happened. I was watching a really good podcast with Anne McElvenney and Phelan McAteer, who they're this Irish couple that talk about high-profile lawsuits and court cases that have gone on, and they did a whole podcast on it. And what you don't hear, and I'm not defending Harvey Weinstein because he is a pig, but one of the women that he's in jail for actually has emails written after the alleged assault saying how wonderful it was to meet him. Could she meet up with him in Europe and all of this? And she had I think she had like a script or something she wanted him to read.
Wow.
So there's a lot behind it. So like I said, there's men I know that like keep all these emails and messages and cards from women just in case.
Something happens.
Because this is a thing as well, is that women and women are going to go, she's such a traitor and she hates women, but it's not. I'm just speaking from my experience living in Los Angeles. There are a lot of manipulative women out there, getting pregnant and having babies from celebrities, lying to them, saying they're on birth control, doing all these things. And I've seen it firsthand. Right. And obviously, and of course, I'm not saying that all the men are innocent or all men are perfect, but I've seen a lot of devious women, and that also goes back to what I say about playing stupid, being pretending to be incompetent, playing dumb. I've seen all of that. So, yeah.
Do you know if LA's changed at all since those days?
Do you know? I don't know, because when I do go back, I probably go back a couple of times a year, but literally just go and sunbathe, go and eat some healthy food, maybe do a bit of yoga, because there were always two sides. You could go and do the healthy thing, or you could go and do the party thing, and I always did healthy yoga, eat healthy, green juice, boring, boring, some kind of stuff. So I don't know if it's changed. I stayed away from it during COVID because if you had conservative opinions there, you'd get jumped on. Right. I was probably when I lived there very in the middle, and I think everything just moved to the left. So then I'm stuck being labeled far right or right wing when I was probably always kind of in the middle, and things shifted. But I just stayed away during COVID because then there was the BLM stuff that kicked off there.
Do you know how much? I don't actually know in terms of how big was it in LA?
Big. I remember when there were riots, and where I used to live, the Argentinian restaurant got set on fire. Wow. I lived just on the corner of Melrose and it was full of little independent coffee shops, fruit juice shops, nail salons, little boutiques. It was all there weren't many chains down that road, is what I'm saying, and it just got completely ransacked, destroyed, set on fire, looted, smashed to pieces. Things were stolen, and it was insane. And what was crazy is I saw a lot of my friends kind of defending it.
No way. Wow.
Yeah. So, and I think that's when people were like, oh, hold on a minute. She's like, what's happened to her? She's moved back to England, and all of a sudden she's like, you know, really right wing. And I was like, no, you can't defend looting and destroying all these shops. It's like, it's craziness. And again, it wasn't even necessarily black people doing it. It was white liberals doing it in their name. So that was probably one of the craziest things about it. Like the virtue signalers coming out, being like, let's, you know, causing all trouble. I remember they were like the big, I think like the big Humvees, and like the National Guard was out just down the road from where I lived. All sorts of stuff was going on. And then I remember that it was like people were writing like "burn the rich," and all of a sudden, because by this time we'd moved up onto a hill, and there were people. Suddenly, the people that were like, yeah, all these gun laws, we need to be strong with the gun laws. They're like, oh my God, we need a gun to protect ourselves. And they couldn't obviously get one because it's not that easy, and you have to go through all these processes. But I remember that happening as well, because they were really worried that, you know, the looters and the rioters were going to come up into the hills, because they were literally saying like, you know, kill the rich, eat the rich, burn the rich. And all of that during it too.
Well, it's ironic, and again, not a nice irony, but like we saw Charlie Kirk die last year, and you look at what happened post him dying, where it's just basically people praying, hugging, going out these campuses, and you look at the way his passing happened, and you compare it to George Floyd's, which is the two differences are crazy. One costs hundreds of millions of pounds in vandalism. The other one, I don't think any costs of anything.
No.
And so it's really sad. Did you see when you were in LA, like this, I don't know, like this virtual signaling culture? Because it's definitely probably worse now, last 10 years or so. Did you see it then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, obviously, and I've been back a lot since. And it's everything, the virtue signaling, from BLM to the trans kids to COVID, and the double masking, and it was like I hadn't even heard of that, right? So I remember that obviously I didn't go back during the worst part of it, because I just thought I'll stay in England, it's all a bit crazy, and I'm also an American citizen, so I was able to travel without being vaccinated, so I could still go back to Los Angeles. So when I did, I'd heard all this stuff about all these double maskers, and I'm looking around and people are walking out in the, it's not like they're even doing it in a shop or inside, it's like in a mask. And then I've gone for a hike up in the canyons, and I saw some, I'm no joke, out in canyons, what would you call it? It's not countryside, it's just it's not wilderness, but it's just outside. And there were people with, their masks on still. It was like, are you doing this because you're scared, or are you doing it because you're trying to say something? So I think Los Angeles was such, virtual signaling heaven.
Talking of COVID, I've seen you talk a lot about digital IDs, and you've done I've seen you on X do really good comparisons with what happened during COVID now with digital IDs. For people who don't follow you on X or are unaware of the links between them, because a lot of people will just say they're two different things completely. How do you connect the dots with what happened during COVID and now what we're seeing with Keir Starmer's idea of digital ID?
Well, I think there was a framework, and I think they put the idea out there. I think even though we were bad in England, we weren't as bad in England as, say, California or Australia. Or other countries where they were or New Zealand or even Canada, where you couldn't get on a bus if you hadn't had the jab. I think, they were setting out this framework to be able to collect IDs really, really easily, and get people kind of used to showing, their phones or their passes or what have you. And I think as well, when we saw that you can only go, in England, we were only allowed to travel a certain distance. People were getting in trouble for leaving their homes to pick up gym equipment or something, say, or go for a walk. And I think that's all part of, building a wider surveillance state to just watch what everything's doing. So for me, I'm like, So one side of me is like, well, you know, I don't do anything wrong. How bad would it be if I walked into a shop? But actually, what if I'd walked into that shop during COVID where I'm not allowed to be out of my house for more than an hour? You know, this is the problem.
Yep.
It's when the technology falls into the wrong hands, which inevitably it's going to fall into the wrong hands at some point with some government. And this is, you know, this is what's really scary about everywhere in the West just rolling it all out. You know, even America's doing it. Palantir is really huge. So I think that's the scary part, is that yes, we're all, you know, all law-abiding citizens shouldn't have to worry, but we do worry because it's just inevitable it is going to fall into the wrong hands. And why do we, you know, and this is why I think we talked about them like allowing things to happen. Personally, I think this is why they are kind of allowing crime to happen, why they're so soft on crime, because then it gives everyone the motivation to be like, well, you know, if we just had facial recognition in every shop we walk into, these people wouldn't necessarily be able to steal. So it kind of makes people beg for it. Like, we're not safe in this country. Let's have facial recognition and digital IDs absolutely everywhere we go, so that we can be safer, when really all you have to do is just crack down on crime. And then we don't need it all, right? Just crack down on the crime.
You kind of answered this question just there, and because it's a regular pushback I'll get from people when I oppose digital ID, and it's like, as long as you're a law-abiding citizen, you have nothing to worry about. So what's the big problem with digital ID? But as you say, that it could go into the wrong hands. How about if somebody was to say it's always going to be, I don't know, government controlled? I think there's a lot of people, what I'm trying to say is a lot of people don't see the problem with government controlling digital ID.
Yeah.
I don't think not many people put, like we saw with COVID, we now know so much stuff that happened when COVID was wrong. I don't think many people can connect the two dots of the problem that the government are in charge of it, and that's the big issue.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Like you said, it's like depends who's in charge of. So you could, for example, you could love Donald Trump now, and then he brings in digital ID. But what happens next? Or what happens if you hate Donald Trump now, and so you don't want him having your digital ID? And sometimes I think about it, you know, when they can, you know, they're talking about being able to read all your text messages and stuff. Like, you know, it's fine if I agree with everything that the president or the prime minister says, but inevitably you're not going to agree with everything. Like, you know, I was all for Trump coming in, but there's things that I've, you know, wanted to ask questions about that I find very, very questionable about what's going on now. And it's like, well, then I'm thinking, God, you know, if I was all for this, it would have been great while I was for him, but what about now that I have questions? And you're never going to agree with any government 100%. You're never going to agree with any politician 100%. So having so much surveillance on you and the government having so much control is worrying to me, because and we don't know how tyrannical they can become. You know, we just saw a glimpse, and that was the Conservatives. We just saw a glimpse during COVID, and I mean, it was huge, but it was like a little glimpse of how it could be. So, you know, I'd hate the thought of any government saying, right, this is your zone, you can't pass through here, you can't go here, we're going to recognize, you know, you can't be out your house for more than an hour. So therefore, if you get caught on 2 cameras in 2 different shops in an hour and a half, we have the police over around your house, you know. So yeah, digital ID is very scary to me.
I mean, you said perfectly there, but I mean, the question I have in terms of with digital ID, not just the government side of it, is what happens, like I said, if you have the idea of like foreign interference, if people like cybersecurity is like a lot stronger in other countries than ours. We know that China are way stronger when it comes to this stuff than we are. You don't know what happens if it falls to their hands. Do you just think, I suppose China's a good example of this as well, where one things I really didn't like, I was so anti-lockdowns, is because for me I think when a government gets more power, regardless of Conservative or Labour, very few will give it up. Like, no, that's the big concern. It's like, if you think about the person in that position, the next reform government or whoever, and I'd like to think that they would get rid of it, but then at the same time for them it's more control, it's more power. It's very hard. I think any man or woman, if you've been given more and more power, do you just give it up willingly?
And that's the thing. I don't think we've seen that many things being reversed. So I think that's, I do think it's huge. And as you said, I forgot to mention, like, digital IDs will kind of store everything we have in, one kind of system or database with the rise of AI. And it's like, I don't know that it can be trusted. It can be so easily hacked. We've seen so many government websites or portals or whatever being hacked. And look at what happened with the post office. I just don't think, and Horizon and the post office, and how there have been mistakes being made, but then they blamed the postmasters for, computer mistakes. So I don't think having all our information stored on one central system could possibly be a good idea.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely crazy, at least with it being a little spread. Like, and if someone can take your digital ID, then have they got everything of yours and every bit of detail? So yeah, I think it's a little worrying, the whole rise of AI and digital ID and a surveillance state. I think it's coming, and I think it's we need to kind of push back a little bit, because we don't really want to be like China and then have social credit and everything else attached to it.
I mean, like, I think the example you gave of Trump is a really good one, because there'll be lots of people listening to this love Trump, lots of people don't like him, and it's a good example. If you're somebody if you're that odd one person who likes the Keir Starmer right now, I think the best way to think of it is, would you be okay with Nigel Farage having access to your digital ID? Are you okay with Nigel Farage, Donald Trump having access to you, and vice versa for the other way around? Because I think when you put it like the way you put it there, I think that will probably resonate a lot more with people, because I just feel like it's a lot of the more left-leaning side that are more pro-digital ID. I don't know that many people. I don't know.
But it was funny, because I actually surprisingly saw people like Owen Jones come out and say, like, no digital ID.
Oh, wow.
And then Jonathan Pye? So there were some real, like, lefties that were like, wait a minute. I'm like, oh God, is Keir Starmer actually uniting the country through everyone absolutely hating him? I think that actually could be a positive for 2026, that so many people end up hating him so much that kind of
unified by hatred.
Yeah. So, it is a weird one, and I think that maybe it's because those people do see that side, like, well, hold on a minute, like, I might be okay with Labour having it, but what if it does turn to reform? They'd be a little, and then it's the same. It's like, well, even if reform was to do it, I'd still be no, because it's like, but I don't want the next person. Like, I don't know who's going to be in now or 20 years, and God knows what's going to be happening in 30 years. Yeah. And hopefully I'll still be alive then. So,
I mean, that's that's the definite concern. I mean, we've talked a lot about Labour now. Obviously, reform are the subject in the UK. Do you feel like reform will win the next general election? Because when I speak to people in Britain, I am surprised about people who have been a bit more on the left of my friends, or just general people. I'm really surprised of, in a positive way, for reform, the different profile of people they're attracting now. Initially I just saw it as people who are traditionally conservative and they've been let down by the Conservative Party. But now in the last, I'd say 6 months, I've definitely seen people who I would never have predicted be voting for something more right-leaning or whatever, but saying that they're going to vote for reform. So do you see them growing?
I think so, definitely. And I think you're right, because I've seen that as well with people that, well, like I said, there were a few people that were just so against the Conservatives that they voted Labour. Yeah. And I don't think, because it was quite rushed with Nigel Farage kind of leading the party, I don't think they had enough of a build-up. Had that happened 2 years prior, it could have been a different situation. So I think that now they have gained that momentum. I think Labour have been so bad, which, that was inevitable. But that has kind of made people think, God, we can't have them in again, but we definitely, we don't want the Conservatives back, because they weren't conservative enough, or just because they also lied, or, whatever reason it is. And I think as we kind of been allowed a little bit more to speak about where our tax money is going, I think I think working class people, that Labour used to be the party for working class people, I think they're just as angry because, they see where their money's going to. The Labour have lifted the two child cap. And so, all these working people are like, well, I can't even afford to feed my kids. Why am I, paying for someone else who has like 6 kids kind of thing? Or they're going, because they've got 6 kids, they're going to earn more than me just living on benefits, where I'm out at 6 in the morning working my ass off to provide or try to provide. So I think that the working class person has actually turned because Labour's more for the non-working benefits class kind of situation. And I'm all for benefits if people are in an emergency situation or something horrific's happened, or, they've had an accident, or there's been a death in the family, or, they're completely disabled. But the amount of benefit fraud that happens in this country is out of control and needs to be reined in. There's people that have come to this country simply for the benefits, so you wouldn't even need to do the mass deportations. You just have to stop a lot of the benefits and people will be like, oh, what's the point of being here? So I think that's why a lot of people are like, okay, no, we see it now. Labour are no longer the party for working class people or anyone that wants hard work. And, and that will be where the change is, because the wealthy can just leave. The wealthy that don't have to be in an office every day, they can just leave, like Charlie Mullins, who you've just had on the podcast. And like so many people I know, it's like, why stay here? Then you find out that these billionaires and millionaires that are leaving, the amount of tax they pay is like something takes thousands of, regular people to make up for the taxes that, this one person is not paying anymore because they've left. So I do think people are seeing it, and they're just like, why are we working our asses off for, people with benefit fraud?
Do you think, like, again, I don't have the official stats on this, but it just feels like in the UK you're disincentivized to work, and like unless you make really good money, you probably are better off just staying on benefits. I think that's what it feels like. I don't know the exact stats, but it just doesn't feel like I think back when my parents came to the UK, this is 60s, I feel like then there was a real incentive that you could climb up the ladder. Like you could work hard and slowly save money and get, higher and higher. Whereas I look at it now and I just think you're either it's better to not work, or if you're somehow able to be on the higher of the middle class, lower upper class, then you're okay. But everyone else is just screwed. Like if you're in that in between period, it's horrific. Like the people in the lower middle class or working class are really being battered at the moment. And like you said, my mum's from the Philippines. She came over in the 70s, probably like your parents. You kind of had to work. You didn't get the opportunity to have a house given to you or loads of benefits. You came to England if you wanted to work your ass off and build yourself a better life. When I moved to America and I got a visa and then a green card, if I wasn't working, I would have to leave. My visa would be revoked. I'd have to go. I wasn't going to be allowed to stay in America if I couldn't support myself. The American government wouldn't allow it. So why are people allowed to come to the UK who cannot support themselves? And then when you look at the numbers of certain, because Keir Starmer won't release them, Donald Trump actually has just released. Yeah, I saw. The stats on the people with benefits now. And you can see, some of the percentages of people from countries are on 70% of the people from a certain country are on benefits. So why is that being allowed? Why don't we just say, that's it, unless you've worked here and paid into the system, you can't claim. We're not going to give you a council house. It's wrong. It's that stats. I saw it just before us meeting up, and it's just crazy, the numbers that I saw. I didn't think any of them would be higher than 30% max. I did not expect the numbers to be as high as, and then I would love. And I think if you're a British taxpayer, you have a right to know this sort of information, because that's where your taxes are going. So I think you should be able to see where exactly your money is going, and in particular benefits, what percentage is it coming from? Because I think if you don't release that data, then we're just going to presume anyway.
Yeah.
And we'll probably use the American and equivalent and think similar here. So why not just do
Why
it?
not release it?
Yeah.
That's the thing. And you know why they won't release it, because I think it's going to anger a lot of people.
Yeah.
And rightly so. Because I don't think British people would care about paying tax if it was going to truly the people that needed it, not benefit fraud. If it was going onto the NHS and not all the stupid wokery around it, like the rainbow crosswalks and the rainbow walls and the murals. And, you know, and it was a working system where there weren't insane waiting lists, people wouldn't care as much. If it was going on the road, if it was going on the police service that didn't just go around arresting people for social media posts, if it was going on like the judicial, you know, it would just be very different. I mean, there was just the case, wasn't there, of the Islamist killer, murdered 2 people, and some human rights lawyers decided to take on his case, sue because they said he had depression for being isolated, but he was a killer. He'd murdered 2 people. He got £7,000 in compensation, just 7,000. But the lawyers in charge who were working on his case got 240,000 of taxpayers' money. And it's almost like a human rights industrial complex, I call it, because you've got all these human rights lawyers bringing these insane cases. So just tell me how the person they were bringing the case for gets 7,000, but they get 240,000 of taxpayers' money. And I think that's why British people are so angry. It's like, why is our money being used in such a stupid way, or going on wars, or going, you know, as foreign aid? But, you know, help us first, and maybe we wouldn't need to have such high taxes, and maybe we would encourage more wealthy people to be here and not push them away if they could, you know, if we were spending money properly and not just wasting it.
No, it's totally true. And it's like when you see the figures like that, and you see the amount of money that goes to the NHS, and it's just like every year they get more and more, and what do you get back from it? Like the NHS is, I think that was a big realization even over COVID. I think we have to stop saying it's free, and because we pay for it, just like private healthcare in other countries. And I think that the NHS, the amount of money it gets, and this idea that it needs to keep getting more and more and more and more, it's just, I don't think that's the right answer. And it's the same with a lot of the public government institutions. They get a lot of money. I think there should be a lot more scrutiny on where it goes.
And I always say to people, because everyone knows a nurse or something like that, even if they don't know doctors personally, they must know a nurse or somebody who works in a hospital. It's like, why don't you ask them how many interpreters they have? Like, there's like so many interpreters they just have on call, getting crazy amounts of money because, you know, somebody, or ask a midwife. I asked a midwife who was the girlfriend of someone I know, and she said that there were 10 people in this hospital. They were having babies. Maybe only 3 were English, and the rest all needed interpreters. And you have to call this interpreter if you want to give them something for a headache, so that they know what's going on, or anything that they might need. You have to get the interpreter. You have to call the interpreter, and there's a minimum charge. And even if it's only like a 10-second call or a half an hour call, there's like this charge. And if it's just to ask, you know, about paracetamol, they have to call up, and it's just like ding, ding, just all this money going out. And it's just like, ask your nurse friends, ask your midwife friends, ask anybody involved, ask, you know, what's going on and where's the money going.
It's definitely disturbing, the amount of money that's getting wasted from taxes. Going back to a bit of your earlier point, talking of your mum and the fact that she came from Philippines, do you think one of the reasons you're so proudly British, why you care, and why this generally what's going on is hurting you, is because you see the value of Britain, because your mother would have instilled it, and just you're almost not fortunate to be born in Britain, but like you really understand it because you could have seen what life could have been had your mum not moved.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing, she integrated, she wanted to be British, like, you know, she didn't raise us speaking Filipino. I remember when my friend, we were learning French and Spanish at school, And we had the things where we had to put the names in Spanish next to the words in English, or like dog, cat, whatever. I asked her if she would do it in Filipino. And she was like, no. Just learn your English, learn your Spanish, learn what you meant to learn at school. Right. She didn't want to do that. And you know, some people say, oh, you missed out on a bit of culture. But I think really, we had the food. But you know, I didn't speak it because she wanted English to be our first language, and she wanted us brought up as, you know, as English or British as we could be. And she wanted to integrate and have British friends and, you know, friends within where she worked. And she, you know, and if she wanted to be in the Philippines and she wanted to be in that part and have that culture, she would have been there. She wouldn't have come to Britain. So that, to me, is so important about people being able to integrate and, you know, not just keeping in, like, their own communities when they go somewhere.
Do you think that's shaped some of your opinions today on mass migration and immigration?
Yeah, definitely. And I used to find it funny. I think when I lived in Los Angeles, I think it was very different because a lot of when they spoke about illegals, it was like Mexicans, but they were very hard-working people. They hadn't come for benefits. They had to sneak in and they had to work really hard. So I didn't really know about what was going on in England. So this is like 20 years ago, 17 years ago. And she would always say, like, you know, because she had to learn English, she had to get a skill, she had to become qualified for her to come to England. Yeah. She wasn't able to just get a free pass and then get everything handed to her. Yeah. So she was very angry about all the illegals coming over because she's like, you know, and not integrating and then being like just loads of men because, you know, she really had, and it's probably the same with your parents.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think your mother, similar to my parents, I think they're the ones who are almost the most angry with what's going on because the journey that they had to get to England in the first place, and now they teach their children the British values and this is the best way of living, blah, blah, blah. And then it's just now getting eroded and eradicated. And for them, it's like, wow, we worked so hard to get our children here in the first place, had these opportunities, and now it's just getting torn apart. So I can understand your mum and similar people to our parents being so angry because the ones I speak to, they always generally are people who came 60s, 70s, 80s, immigrants from that era who are so angry about what's happening in the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's funny, and it really is. There's so many legals that have come, work their asses off that are angry at it. And there's a lady called Based and Bougie on Twitter that I follow.
I just had her on my podcast last episode. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, was she here?
She wasn't here. We did it virtually.
I absolutely love her, and she's got the same story.
Yeah.
Her parents came, worked to provide this, you know, to provide a good life for her. Wasn't a taker. And so it's like, you know, her parents said the same, and she's on the same page as us, you know, and I think that's the thing. I think it's, you know, we do have parents that have come or like me, one parent that have come and just wanted to integrate into Britain, live the British way, instill those values in their children. And, you know, my mum would, when I was probably 17, 18, my mum, I'd say, you know, can I go to the Philippines? And she knew it wasn't safe. It wasn't a safe place for me. Yeah. And so, you know, so I didn't go unless I was with her. And that's not how she didn't want us to live in an unsafe place. She wanted us to live in a very safe Britain. So, yeah, I think it's it's funny. I think we share that in common as kids of legal immigrants who have, you know, really got into the British culture that you know, they're as adamant as anyone. They don't want it to change.
Definitely. Well, Leilani, it's been amazing speaking to you. We have a closing ritual on the show where I ask the guests for an unpopular opinion that they have that they think should be popular. So it could be anything we talked about in the last hour or so. It can be something completely random, but just, an unpopular opinion you have.
Oh, gosh, I wish I had noticed. Oh, gosh. I don't know what's popular and not unpopular at the moment. I suppose the Me Too was one. I think I took you by surprise with that one. So, yeah, I'd say the Me Too, and just watch out for, like, the people that were very vocal about Me Too and how they treat victims of what's going on in the UK now and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much for your time, Leilani. Thank you.